Roads, Trails, and Rabbit Holes, episode number 3. Wow, I kind of jumped right into the middle of that one, didn't I? Hey guys, Tom here, and yes, this is the 3rd episode of Road, Trails, and Rabbit Holes. We have the usual run of things today. I have a couple of main topics. We do have a cheap gear review that I think you will like. We also have some podcasting behind the scenes items and Don't Be That Human. And in this case, I'm going to cover Don't Be a Human first, but we are going to get into Don't Be That Human, not Don't Be a Human. That's on me. I do want to say, though, this Don't Be That Human is me specifically, and a big mistake I did. And this again was the last time Kate and I went out to Sawtooth. You might wonder why I'm wearing a hoodie in the middle of July when it's like 90 degrees in Green Bay. It is because I'm in the basement and it's a little chilly down here. So there I sit. With that, let's just jump right into that first, Don't Be That Human. Now, when I started doing a few more outdoor adventures back in the day, and if you've listened to the first couple of episodes, you kind of know what I did before with a 4-day on, 4-day off schedule. That allowed me a lot of time to, for both my wife and I to get out and do some camping, for me to get out and do some exploring and have some fun. It gave me more time off. I run with the adage, as far as a vehicle goes, the better the mileage, the more adventures you can have, because they don't cost you as much. So for a adventure vehicle, my requirements were front-wheel drive, good economy, and enough room to sleep in it if I wanted to do a little stealth camping, which I did. And at that time, I had I believe it was a 2010. It was a Chevrolet HHR. Those are the kind of retro-looking station wagon type, small cars, 4-cylinder engine, very efficient, automatic transmission. It got about 32 on the highway. You either love those or you hate those, but this thing was white. It just looked like somebody bought an old government car of some kind. It just blended in well. It didn't draw any attention. Nobody ever bothered it at the trailhead. The good news is I could sleep in it. Just push the passenger seat forward, lay down the back seat, nice and flat, throw out a little self-inflating mat in my sleeping bag, and off I would go. I could sleep in the back of that just fine. So that was my adventure vehicle. When Kate and I did our first trip to Sawtooth back in 2022, we took that car. Now, I did what most of you do. I picked up my cell phone, went into Google Earth, and destination, Grand Jean Campground, and hit begin trip. And that we just pretty much followed that map all the way through. The problem is, at one point, right around the Montana-Idaho line, we ended up realizing this is a gravel road we're turning onto. I don't know how long we will be on a gravel road. I don't know if it goes all the way through. It wasn't rainy. It was sunny, and it was middle of June, so it was sunny and dry, fairly warm. The weather was in our favor. But now we're in the unknown, so we had to make a decision. Do we backtrack? Do we figure out our way around? And totally against everything I teach, I didn't even have a road map in the car. I didn't have an atlas of any kind. And I have, well, you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I have a road atlas sitting up there on that shelf by my backpack. I did not have any kind of map, but we were able to zoom in on Google Earth a bit, which you might always not be able to do because you might have good directions, but you might not have a great enough connection to zoom in and see things. We were, and what we decided was we will proceed cautiously. It's a small car. The road is wide enough to turn around without getting stuck running off the road. So we will just proceed on the gravel road. And we did for probably a good 45 or 50 miles. We were able to go and see just how long that gravel road was. In the end, yes, it did save us time. But I don't know if I'd do it again because you don't know the condition of that gravel road. You don't know if you get somewhere, for example, Iowa is famous for that same thing. Google Earth will put you on what they call an unimproved road. And then you get about halfway down it, and then there's a big sign that says, this road no longer maintained, and everything from that point on looks like garbage. I had to really be careful with those when I was hauling livestock because I don't want to be on them to begin with, and I don't want to back up 15 miles looking for a place to turn around a truck with a trailer. That's just not fun. So we made that through safely, but it was stupid. It was stupid of us not to, A, have a map to see what our other options are, and B, how could we have avoided that in the first place? If you use Google Maps, and I would imagine most of the others are the same way, you have settings in there, and you go into those settings, and here's two that will throw you off. One will be whether or not to allow dirt roads, gravel roads, unimproved roads. Make sure, unless you want to do the unimproved roads, make sure you turn that setting off. The other is the most economical route, which will put you on 2-lane roads and going through towns to save fuel economy as opposed to fastest route. And maybe there are times you want to do some exploring, and that most economical route might be the best alternative. That being said, know those settings, have a map, and when you're in doubt, stop. And don't be the human that I was when we did that trip 4 years ago. We will be doing that differently this August when we return to Sawtooth. So there you go. That's a first-person lesson from me that I learned the hard way. Now let's get on to the main meat of the episode, which is wildlife encounters in the woods, backpacking, camping, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to just start this by giving you guys some ideas of where my mind is at on some of these and what my biggest fears are. I did a little bit of research on maybe some numbers and statistics and things. Here's some things that are really no risk at all. Coyotes. Coyotes don't want a damn thing to do with you. They're a timid animal. They're a grab-and-go animal. There's really... I couldn't find any encounters of humans and coyotes. And I'm sure somebody can find some, and you hear all these, oh, coyotes have been known to run in packs and kill people. No, they haven't. Coyotes are after a small game. They're noisy. They like to howl at night, but they're timid. They really don't like human beings. So coyotes are just not an issue. If you're stupid and leave food around, you're going to draw critters. And coyotes are a critter. So as long as you're practicing good food safety principles, animal principles, they are no threat at all. And if they are a threat, they're not a threat to you. They're a threat to just ruining your morning, your afternoon, your evening. So coyotes I'm not even going near. The other one is wolves. Wolves attacks are rare. In the state of Idaho, there is not a single record of a wolf attacking a human being. Now, they have gray wolves in northern Idaho. We never saw any. Now, I can say that population is growing. Wolves in Oregon, that population is growing. And they're, again, a big problem to farmers, especially if you're raising sheep. That would be a prime example because they do like easy prey. And there, packs are known to go do some damage, and farmers do what they have to do to protect themselves. But again, encounters with a wolf on a human are very rare. They would just assume, stay away from you. I'm going to give you the two that I fear the most. Okay, one are grizzlies. And I'm not going to tell you how to behave in grizzly country because I'm only going to tell you what I would do. I'm not backpacking in heavy grizzly country. I'm just not doing it. I choose not to. It's still not a huge risk if you do things right, but it's just something I chose not to do. If I did go into grizzly country backpacking, I would go with somebody who has been there, maybe even with a guide, in a group where everybody has a leader who knows the best practices, knows the trail, knows the problems, and knows some protocol. I will not go into bear country without bear spray. But grizzlies, off limits. And that's just my personal choice. I have no big desire to go backpack Yellowstone or some Yosemite or any of those. And maybe that will change as I become more skilled in what I'm doing. Another one that I have a healthy fear and respect for is rattlesnakes. And I can't say that I won't ever backpack in rattlesnake country. We have rattlesnakes in Wisconsin. They're mostly in the southwest region. They are timber rattlers. The timber rattler is a little smaller and a very timid animal. It really wants nothing to do with people. So unless you get near one and just piss it off, you're pretty safe. But still, be aware of your surroundings. The two that seem to be where humans and these animals run it, actually three. I'm going to throw three in here. Let's deal with the moose first. The moose is not a predator. The moose doesn't want your food. The moose is probably not going to invade your tent at night. The moose is probably going to go the other way when he hears you. That being said, you still want good food storage practices. Bear hang, bear canister, keep your food out of your tent, keep your food away from camp. The best practices, in our case, when we'd stop and have dinner, we would set up our tents, but we would go away from the tent to cook, like 20, 30 yards. That's where we'd do our meal prep and have our meal, and we would go with the wind at our backs, leaving the tent to push the cooking the other way, and then we would return to the tent. And quite often, if I have a single-sided tent, there was more humidity than I thought. So quite often my tent I would shake out and then just leave to air dry. And then after breakfast, we'd fold up the tent and go. The moose, if you piss him off, he's going to charge you. That's the reality with it. So be respectful around the moose. Don't just stay farther away from the moose than you would a bear. I mean, especially if they have calves. Any animal is, other than the snapping turtle we talked about before, any animal is protective of their offspring. So they say give at least 50 yards of space. Never go between the cow and the calf. If the ears pin back or the animal starts walking toward you, just leave. Go the other way. Don't run. I don't know if they'd chase you or not, but just stay away. Our son got chased by a moose years ago on a boat trip when he was a teenager on a houseboat trip with a church youth group. And he ran into the woods and the moose left him alone, but then he was lost. And luckily they found him a short time after. Elk or deer, there are very little risks of them. Here's the thing going back to rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes, my only fear with a rattlesnake is, sawtooth. There's very little presence of a rattlesnake up above the ridgeline especially. They're just not up in those higher altitudes. Southern Idaho, a little more. But if you're somewhere where you're 30 miles from a trailhead, you're 12 hours from a helicopter rescue, and you get bit by a snake, there's not a lot you can do. You don't cut the wound. You don't have somebody try and suck the venom out. But yeah, you do need help, and you're probably not going to walk out for that help. If there's somebody else there, don't elevate you want to keep your heart above the wound. You want to I'm not going to give you all the advice, look it up, but fatality of a rattlesnake bite is fairly rare. A good 20% of the bites are dry bites. They didn't even put venom in you. They just bit you. But you still have now an open wound by an animal that God knows where those teeth have been. So are they a threat? Yeah, and I do fear those. Those are one of my biggest fears, but they're not going to prevent me from going somewhere that I would like to go. So let's progressively move to where the bigger threats are, having eliminated the grizzly bear, because I'm not going there. The first would be mountain lions. Now, first off, let's separate bobcats, cougars, and mountain lions. Cougars and mountain lions are the same thing. Two different names for the same animal. A bobcat is a much smaller animal. They tend to really like close to urban areas where they can, run away with your cat, run away with a possum, a squirrel. They're not after people. I can't find any problems with bobcats and human beings other than getting them out of your backyard when they went after your dog and cat. The mountain lion's attacks are actually very rare. And most of the time, they are after runners or they are after bike riders, specifically the bike riders. When a mountain lion sees something going fast, its instinct is to stop it. So just the fact that it saw you and you're hauling ass, it's going to chase you. If you do get between one and their baby, yeah, you're going to, again, you get between the mountain lion and their cub, you could have a problem. But they are not by nature stalkers of you for food. Now, again, you can get into areas where animals have been conditioned. People do stupid things, and you are going to you're going to have a problem. But mountain lions, for the most part, they're really no risk. Here's the key to mountain lions: keep your distance. If you see one, if you hear something stalking you in the woods, that's probably what it is. And just be very aware of where you are. Maybe you want to turn around and go back the other way for a little while and figure out your plan. But don't run. Running will just draw that instinct to chase you down. I am actually, as I'm kind of BSing through this, I'm looking for another article that I pulled up. This was, okay, here we go. I found it. This was in Ovando, Montana, a grizzly bear attack, and this was near Glacier National Park. I think we all heard about this when it happened, but nobody heard the details. Everybody just heard it was a grizzly bear attack of 3 women doing a bike route on the Great Divide mountain bike route. That's a big trail that goes Canada to Mexico. They were 50 miles outside of Glacier Park. They were near the town, too. And they had their tent set up. And here is, and I had AI do just a little recap rather than try and read the whole article. Okay, so these 3 women, we know they're in grizzly country. They knew they were in grizzly country. When I see these things, I like to read them and keep in my mind, what would I have done differently? What did they do that this would have never happened to me because I would have taken certain steps? So that's what I look for. So first off, around 3 a.m., the grizzly entered the campsite. And this is according to the official investigation. The bear came directly to the campers' tents. One of the ladies later said the bear had actually huffed at my head. The campers yelled and successfully drove it away. Okay, here is screw up number 1. If a grizzly was just huffing and growling at your tent, and you chased it off, I don't care if it's 3 a.m. or not. I'm breaking camp and I'm going somewhere else. And I'm probably 3 a.m. Even if I rode late into the day, I am now so rushed with adrenaline and your heart's a pumping and everything's going and you're dealing with everything. I'm packing up camp and I'm probably up for the day. And I'm just going to embrace the suck. Know I'm going to have a long day. And guess what? I'm going to be heading out of there with my headlight on, and if I was biking, I might be pushing that bike a little bit, but I am leaving. So they didn't leave. Here is what they did. They removed packaged snacks and dry lentils from their tent. Why was the food in their tent? Didn't they know better? Bear hang, bear canister? I would think, granted you have the mass, but it'd be easier to deal with a 2-pound bear canister on a bike than on in a backpack. But that being said, yeah, so they removed that from their tent. However, she left toiletries in bags that had previously contained dried blueberries. Toiletries. So what are we talking about? Deodorant, toothpaste, things like that. Those are attractive smells to not just bears, to any animal. That's where you get the rats coming into your tent, the rodents, the squirrels, the chipmunks. That's where you get the problems. But yeah, they left that in their tent. And then they retrieved the bear spray. So the tent still smelled like a taco. She also still had food. Okay, get this. This is beef jerky, trail mix, granola bars, a baked potato, They were all in her bicycle about 10 feet from the tent. That should have never happened. All of this could have been prevented. One lady deadly mauled. She was killed by a bear that the others finally were able to drive away with bear spray, but too late. All of this because they did not do the hard work, figure out all this information that's out there on YouTube and blog sites with experienced campers. And you know the BSers to the people out there living it. I am not the expert. I am reading this, preparing on how am I going to, and I live in bear country. I'm in northern Wisconsin. We do have black bears. How am I going to go into bear country, rattlesnake country, much less, bobcat country, much less, and keep myself safe? They didn't. This is just so totally sad and preventable. But everybody who knows I was getting into backpacking sent me a link to that article and read this before you go out next time, Tom. And okay, I did, and that's what I learned. Rabbit hole. I should have a rabbit hole alert prompt on here. If you want to hear, this was my favorite podcast, and they have stopped doing them. But there's a good archive of them in YouTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't found it already, it's called Out Alive. And Out Alive is a very well produced podcast, NPR quality stuff. But most of the episodes are interviewing hunters, backpackers, explorers, people who, in the middle of nowhere, had an encounter, a fall, an injury, got lost, whatever the case, and they are lucky to be alive. In one case, the guy literally, after a grizzly bear attack, hiked all the way to his truck, drove his truck all the way back to the main road where he could get a cell service, and have contact after being mauled by a grizzly so bad that one eye was hanging out of the socket. I mean, these are, you want to pull over and have a cigarette when you're done listening to these stories. But again, listen to them with the thought in mind of what did he do wrong? And usually they'll tell you what they did wrong. And you learn from everything. Some of these, I can only think of one that wasn't preventable, and that involved polar bears. And seeing how I don't have any plans of camping or backpacking in polar bear country, I'm not worried about it. But that one was probably one of the scariest episodes. Again, that is Out Alive. If you haven't listened to it, it is a great, well-produced, I hate to say entertaining when it's other people's tragedies, but listen to those and what you could learn. I love this as a recap on that last story of the three bike riders. This case is one of the reasons many experienced backcountry travelers say that the first nighttime visit from a bear should be treated as a serious warning rather than an isolated curiosity. And I would include that for black bears too. When I went out, I was talking in the first episode about the snapping turtles leaving the footprint, but not knowing what that noise was. Had I seen a bear where those snapping turtles were instead of seeing nothing because I couldn't see at night, I am pretty sure I would have broke up camp and walked 6 miles back to my truck and gone home. I don't even know if I would have continued the hike. But at 2 in.the morning, I could find my way the 6 miles back to the truck. That was in episode 1, the 2 times in my first couple, 3, 4 backpacking trips that my life flashed before my eyes. If you didn't catch it, hey, these are getting better as I go along, but go back and give it a listen. So I think I've covered every major threat. Now I'll tell you what my biggest thought of the major threat, and maybe it was a downside of making the decision to do Sawtooth in August. My main thought was June, you still have snow risk. July, number one, Kate's schedule is crazy, so getting hers figured out. July, 4th of July, and all through July, that place is busy. You read the reviews, and there's too many people up there. August, it tapers down, but August, you do have a much higher risk of afternoon thunder showers. They don't last long. They roll in, they roll out. With thunder comes, you've got it, lightning. So I've been reading up on best practices and trying to figure out how far to go. So if you're up on a peak, you don't want to be there at 3 in the afternoon unless you really know the weather. So I've made a few decisions. Number one, keep reading, keep studying, have an outline of when you see the clouds rolling in, what do you do about it? The other thing, and I'm going to just segue into this. This is on some of the things I've talked about before, and I want to just keep you guys up to date. We were talking about tarps, and I mentioned last week I do have a tarp. I have a nice tarp. It is about just shy of 10 feet by 12 feet. I've never camped with just a tarp. I would love the flexibility it offers you. Yes, you give up a floor, but it allows you so many different types of setups. And it also allows you, unlike a Gossamer Gear, the one-man tent, in that afternoon thunderstorm, when you know it's coming, maybe you can drop 1,500 feet in elevation. You're in a safe place. Now you can put up a tarp, have a place to be under, sit out the rain, have a cup of coffee if you wish, whatever the case may be. Thunderstorm goes, fold up the tarp, and you go on your way. I love that idea for flexibility, especially when there's two of us, and we would be going with both of us having a one-person tent. However, I went out this weekend and found a nice, smooth, fairly level field, and I took 3 or 4 configurations in mind. How quick can I set these? Just a perfect A-frame. That's easy to do, no problem. Anything beyond that A-frame, some of it became a little limiting. The limiting factor is the tarp I have has a tie-down on each corner. It has tie-downs on the outside along the ridge line. If you set it up as an A-frame, it has tie-downs in the middle of each side, so you could pull those sides out to give you a little more inside room. What it is missing is the tie-downs like every 2 feet along the side. You just have the 2 corners and 1 in the middle. So on the 12-foot side, you've got 6 feet between tie-downs. On the other side, you have, almost 5 feet between tie-downs. So if that had 8 more tie-downs, 2 more on either side, a quarter of the way along that side, I could do so much more with it. And it does not, so I have enough things to get ready to do this trip without going out and shopping and trying to buy another tarp. I don't want to spend the money. And just too much going on. So I'm going to just focus on taking the Gossamer Gear. Kate's still choosing and getting her equipment as we're running low on time. That trip will take place soon, and I will probably do some filming up there and put a few videos up. Oop, I moved something that made noise. So that's up with the tarp. The other thing I decided, and this goes right back to the lightning and thunder, I have my Garmin InReach Mini 2, and I will get the service turned back on. I should have done that last week. I'll do that this week so I can play with it a little bit. I have a couple of thoughts on the basic service because I do 3 days a week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, there's probably only 10%, or Wednesday and Friday, I should say, 10% of that trip where I might not have cell coverage, and maybe not even that. The Thursday trip is more rural. I'm off on 2-lane roads. I'm on the west side of the central part of Wyoming. I'm in farm country, and I'm basically going through mostly farm towns, dairy farms, crop farms, that sort of thing. And that one, I am in a lot of isolated areas with no cell service on little 2-lane snowy roads. So I'm thinking once I set this up, and I was going to do, it's like $7.95 a month. That gives you the rescue and I think 1 text a day, and then you pay extra for more. I'm thinking I'm going to set that up and leave that set up because in the winter, I might want that flexibility while I'm out and about. I wouldn't even have to turn it on. I'd just turn it on if I need to use those services, get a satellite, and send a text from anywhere. I'm still debating on that. However, I am probably going to bump the service up to a higher level where I can get weather reports to where I am. Maybe that'll cost me $15-20 that month for the month of August. I'll spend that. So now we have up-to-date, accurate weather reports through a much more inclusive satellite system. I think it's the Idiom satellite system this one uses, and know what we're looking at weather-wise in the afternoons in Sawtooth. So those are my updates there. And with that, I'm going to roll into the last segment of the show, and I've been trying to keep these things under 45 minutes. I'm on track today. I like that. I call this one Podcasting Behind the Scenes, and that's where I just want to give you guys what I have learned as a host, I don't even want to call myself an influencer. I'm somebody who is learning from other influencers and from other very good sources and people who are tried and true. If you have a great YouTube channel and you're talking about the latest tent from Walmart, what do they call theirs? This Ozark Trail tent, it's great. Excuse me. And in their link on that Ozark Trail tent that they say is great, in their show notes are the links to Walmart, the links to, I don't listen to those. I don't pay any attention to those. Because I am not going to pump something I'm getting paid to pump, at least in that manner. I have problems with that. I have had sponsors previously on podcasts. I really never promoted anything that I didn't have a very good relationship where I can get on the phone and call somebody and talk to them about what's going on. Have a place, if you had a question, where I could call and intervene. And you know what? I don't want to do that with this podcast. This podcast is entertainment, information, and hopefully a little bit on the educational side. A kind of a combination of those three. So back to what I've learned. I watched the last 2 podcasts. And one thing occurs to me, more so, the first time I watched, I actually played it while I was making my drive, never looked at the video because I don't care. I don't put these videos out expecting big views. I put these out because this is a place to get it out, get a feedback out of 2 or 3 or 4 people who will bother to watch this and give me some feedback right there on YouTube that I can learn and grow from. So it's my way of connecting with somebody who is interested in not just what Tom has to say, but with helping Tom be better at what he does. So these are going out on YouTube. It's going to be after Sawtooth, maybe even October, before I put all of these into a feed where you can get them in your podcast player. So they're not available yet. That being said, here's the problem I noticed when I listened to it without watching. I spend too much time aware that the camera is in front of me, but a little higher than the laptop. So as I do my show, I'm looking at actually my notes way down on paper. The laptop is right in between. I look at that a lot. But I tend to be speaking to the camera, not to the microphone. The problem with that is when I say, hey, check this piece of gear out. I just bought this last week, and then I never even told you what it was because I showed you on the camera, and this isn't a camera-driven show. So, yes, like the InReach Mini, which is what I held up for demonstration purposes. I need to not do that. So from now on, when I do the show, I'm recording on the camera, which is, there you go. Now you know where the camera is. My desktop, I don't know if you can see it. There goes my notepad down, and that's where my notes are. The tablet is up in between, and there's a good 10 inches of space between the top of the camera and the tablet. So what I've been trying to do this time is, okay, I can click my tablet onto the microphone or onto the video, and I can see the video. That is what screws me up. I don't need to watch that. Also, I have to look down a lot farther to see here, and it's less organized when I can just organize my show notes on the tablet, record, go off the tablet, ignore the camera completely while I record. One of the things I'd also like to do, and it would be very easy to do, to switch these around, First off, this is an older 1080p camera, so I do need to upgrade into a 4K camera to give you guys a little better video. The other thing I'd like to do is I would really like to be able to toggle back and forth between a couple of cameras, but I'd like to do that at the USB level and use 2 USB cameras for as easy as they are. I don't know if I've showed this to you before, but I know I did last week. But yeah, my Sony ZV-E10, very nice camera. The problem with this is I can't quite get the it's more limited in frame size, trying to get the right frame size in there. But maybe I will start streaming with, or not streaming, recording with that. Will there ever be a live stream? When I get this thing up and running in the podcast feed, there may be live streams, but I need, if I'll give an example. If I had 1,000 downloads a week on a podcast, and I announced we're going to do the show live on Facebook every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, which we did with the trucking podcast, and that generally 800 to 2,000 downloads that first week, in that range. I would get maybe 6 or 7 people who would show up on Facebook, and that was fine. It was interaction. It was some live questions. Sometimes there were 3 of us hosting that show. It was a lot of fun. If 6 people are watching, you might not get 1 showing up live, and I get it. And right now, I'm just a talking head guy. I'm going to throw out, if you are a podcast junkie enough to follow along this long, if you want to guest host a show or 2, or if you would like to co-host this show on a semi-regular basis, hey, shoot me an email, or, just reach out to me on YouTube. You can find my email address there. ponygallery@gmail.com is what you'll find on the YouTube channel. Shoot me an email there. There's also, I think, the trucking podcast at gmail.com may show up on there too, because this YouTube channel has gone through changes. It was the trucking podcast, and that was not where we did the show live. We did the show live on Facebook, but I did have some videos there, mostly focused on freight brokers and finding loads, and a load board affiliate that I worked with. Then it became Gone with Buck when I thought I was going to do adventure videos and realized I don't want to work that hard. Talk radio is my first love as far as content creator goes. I just need to perfect the art. And you never perfect it, but I'm better at it this week than I was last week. I'm pretty sure. My show notes are better this week than they were last week. I know that for a fact. My ability to stay on track is better this week than last week because of the better show notes and listening to the old shows. I'll leave you with this, and then we'll say goodbye. Charles Spurgeon, I am a Christian, and he's a old preacher from centuries ago, and he, in one of his books, wrote the line, "All preachers need to keep a copy of their sermons so they could weep over them." And every time I go back and listen to one of my old podcasts, I want to delete it and redo it, knowing I can do it better. Part of the reason I'm doing things this way, I am forcing myself to publish first draft, unedited, and improve. So you're episode 3. If you followed along this line, would you let me know if just one person managed to watch all 3 of these beginning to end? I would be so happy. I can't think of anything that would warm my heart better. With that, I am going to reopen our bump music. There we go. We are going to listen to Josh Woodward sing us out with Coffee. And I will see you all in a week. I still think there needs to be whistling to that music at some point.
In the morning, and I get the paper. I check the headlines and decide that I am bored. I check my email and I decide to answer later. Another cup of coffee.